Okay, so we're at the top of 6.5 and 6. They're both very short, so I combined them, and they have a lot to do with each other, so you'll see. But in this first portion, it's kind of just proving what we're learning in this section. So we're going to highlight the largest angle and the longest side, and then make a conjecture about it, which means make a statement about it, or observation. So which is the largest angle in the first? We got A, B, and C. A, go ahead and highlight angle A. It is the largest angle. Which is the longest side? CB is the longest side. And number 2, which is the biggest angle? X. Go ahead and highlight that. And then which is the longest side? YZ or ZY. And then last, number 3, which is the biggest angle? M. So which is the longest side? NP. So we should see a pattern between the longest side and the largest angle. Where is the longest side located in comparison to the largest angle? It's across from it. And that's going to happen for every single triangle. The same thing with the smallest side will be across from the smallest angle. And that's what we learned for the first portion of this section. So we're going to make inequalities. We're going to list sides and angles in order of size, smallest to largest and things like that. So I have a scalene obtuse triangle. It's not on your paper. If you look at it, it just is easier to even see. The longest side is across from the largest angle, the obtuse angle. And then the smallest side, shortest side, is across from the smallest angle. So that's the pattern. We're going to be listing angles and sides given the other. So see that here in a second. So here's a blank, the first blank that you see. If one triangle, or if one side of a triangle is longer than another side, then the angle opposite is larger than the angle opposite the shorter side. So your blank is larger. So here's what you're going to be given. Let's see. We're going to look at the longest side here that we're given. 5 is longer than 3, correct? So which angle is across from 5? Angle A. So go ahead and write this down. We can know that the measure of angle A, and we can compare it to the angle across from the length of 3. So which angle is across from AB? C. So we can compare these two angles just by knowing the side lengths across from them. So the measure of angle A, it's across from 5, which is larger than 3, correct? So then that means the measure of angle A is greater than the measure of angle C. So in this section, you're going to be putting greater than, less than, or equal to. Are we okay with this? Okay. And then you could do it the opposite. Given angles, find a side length or figure out the order of the side lengths. So longer is your blank. So a larger angle is across from the longer side. So which angle is bigger, 60 or 40? 60, and it is across from EF. So we know that the length of EF, remember when you say length of, you don't put a line above, you just say EF. It will be greater than the length of the side across from angle E. What angle is across from E? DF. So length of EF will be greater than the length of DF because it's across from that angle. All right, so we're going to use this to list angles and sides. So on the top of page 2, you're constructing a stage prop that shows a large triangular mountain. The bottom edge of the mountain is about 32 feet long, so go ahead and write that down at the bottom. So JL is 32 feet. The left slope is 24 feet. And then the right slope is 26 feet. It's hard to pick colors that match that. but it'll end up, bless you, it'll end up looking like this. 24, 26, 32. So here is, we can highlight this. We're going to list the angles in order. We're going to go from the smallest to the largest. So we're listing the angles. The number one reason if students get this wrong is they don't read if they're listing sides or angles. But we're listing angles. We want the smallest first. So what is the shortest side? JK is 24. So what is the smallest angle? Angle L. And then the medium side length? 26. It's across from angle J, so that's the medium angle. And then the largest side, which is 32, is across from the largest angle, angle K. There is definitely one of these on the exam. Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. We're going to do the same thing, except for this time, we are listing the angles largest to smallest. So we want largest first, smallest last. So which of these is the longest side? DF, which is across from angle E, so that's the biggest angle. The medium side length, 6x, which is across from angle F, which means our smallest angle is angle D. Good. The last of this section is doing the opposite. We're going to list the sides from shortest to longest. So we're given angles. Do we know all three angles? We do not, so we need to figure out the third angle. How do you find the third angle in a triangle? Add them and subtract from 180. So 51 plus 47, 98. 180 minus 98, 82. So now we want shortest side first. So which is the smallest angle? E, 47 degrees, so across from that, DF. So we are not listing a length. You do put a line above it. We're naming the side. You only don't put the line above when you're saying the length of. The middle angle, the middle measure angle is 51. It's across from FE or EF, which means the longest side is across from our biggest angle, so DE is the last, or ED. That's it on that. Questions, comments, concerns? Feel pretty good? Wonderful news. All right, so this last one, if you see on the top of page 3, there is a box, a bolded box, and it says, in order for 3 lengths to form a triangle. Go ahead and highlight around that box. It is not a complicated topic, but a lot of students will miss this on a test or a quiz because they don't look back at this section. As long as you are capable of adding and comparing, then you can do this section very easily. So certain lengths will not form a triangle, and it only makes sense. Oh, there's a pattern here, and we'll explain. Like 2 inches, 2 inches, and 5 inches, if you see this picture. 2 inches and 2 inches aren't long enough to close the triangle across a 5-inch segment, right? And 3 inches and 2 inches are also not long enough to close a triangle across a segment. But the last one says 4 inches, 2 inches, and 5 inches. It will be long enough to close a triangle. So there's a pattern here, all right? I'm going to explain it, and you'll write down what I explain, not necessarily this. It says the sum of the shorter sides must be greater than the longest side. So what is a sum? 2 numbers added together. The shorter sides added together have to be greater than the longest side. So if you look, the 2 shortest sides on the first one are 2 and 2. Is 2 plus 2 greater than 5? So it doesn't close the triangle. 3 plus 2, is that greater than 5? No, so what would actually happen is 3 and 2, they would make a 5-inch line. So they would actually be 2 lines on top of each other instead of an angle. which is why 4, 2, and 5 works, because 4 plus 2 is, and that's greater than 5. So what you're going to write in is the short side plus the short side has to be greater than the long side. That is the rule we use. The short side plus the short side has to be greater than the long side. We use this again in chapter 9 and in chapter, I don't remember, chapter 10, somewhere around there. So we really need to know this topic. So is it possible to construct a triangle with the given lengths? If not, explain why. The if not, explain why. I'm fine if you just show me your work and that is your explanation. I just essentially, on your test and quiz, want to be sure that you're not just guessing yes or no. That's a 50-50 shot, rather than you actually understanding the material. Does that make sense? So as long as you show me what you did, then I'm content. So in the first one, take the two smaller side lengths, which are 3 and 12. Is 3 plus 12 greater than 17? It is not greater. So is this a triangle? No. It says, is it possible? No. It's just not. So again, your explanation is you just showing me what you did to come to that conclusion. You could always write it out if you don't feel like showing the math. On this next one, we got 5, 21, and 16. Which are the two smallest sides? 16 and 5. Is 5 plus 16 greater than 21? It is not greater than 21, so this is a no. Then again, your explanation is just showing the work. (11) Which are the two shorter side lengths? 5 and 7. Is 5 plus 7 greater than 8? So yes. And then the last, what are the two longer sides? 10 and 3. Is 10 plus 3 greater than 11? So then yes. Boom. That's the end of 6.5. How do we feel about it? Pretty good? Good enough to take a quiz on Monday? Wonderful news. We do practice on Monday too. We don't just enter in on a Monday morning and take it. But we're going to have inequalities in 6.6 in two triangles. You're going to use the same concept. You're going to compare the opposite side or the opposite angle and do less than, greater than, or equal to. All right, so I'm going to write this in layman's terms or explain it. If you look at the picture, you have two sides that are congruent to two sides. We all see this? The third side, we can make a comparison about them given the angle across from them. So we can compare the length of RT to the length of VX simply using the angle across. So what angle is across from RT? It's 100 degrees. And the angle across from VX is 80. So RT will end up being greater because it's across from the bigger angle. So go ahead and fill this in, write this in right here. RT will be greater than VX, and it's because RT is across from the 100-degree angle, whereas VX is across from 80. And then your blank is longer. All right. And then the opposite we can do as well. We again have two sides congruent to two sides. And then we're given the length of the third side. So we can compare the angles across from those sides. So we can compare the measure of angle A to the measure of angle D simply by knowing the lengths across from them. Angle A is across from 8. Angle D is across from 7. So will angle A be less than, greater than, or equal to? Greater than. Because it's across from the longer side. That's it. Ready? Promise, we're almost done. So given that the length of ST is congruent to the length of PR, how does the measure of PST compared to the measure of SPR. So we're first going to write down, this would normally be written for us, the measure of PST and the measure of angle SPR. And then usually you would just have to fill in the blank between them. It's not written for us for whatever reason. But PST, what is the vertex of PST? What is the corner of the angle for PST? S. So PST is talking about this angle. Why couldn't we have just named it S?
Because
There's multiple angles at S. Perfect. And then we're going to compare it to SPR. SPR, what's the vertex of SPR? P. So P is vertex, is the middle letter. So we're going to compare them given the sides across from them. So PST is across from 24. SPR is across from 23. So will PST be less than, greater than, or equal to? Greater than. And that's it. So again, normally the names would already be there, and you would just fill in less than, greater than, or equal to.
So if it was okay, so if it wasn't
Try to think of what you're thinking of. We're going to do 4 more examples like this. So if we don't answer it. All right, we're going to do the same thing. We're just comparing lengths now. We're going to compare JM to LM. So go and write those down. Again, normally they'd be written there, and you would just fill in the blank between them. We're going to compare JM to LM. JM is across from 64 degrees, and then LM is across from 61. So what do we think? Less than, greater than, or equal to? Greater than. Because JM is across from the bigger angle. These 3, we're comparing BC and EF. Comparing BC and EF. You can honestly sometimes just use your eyes, but BC is across from 35, EF is across from 45. So BC, is it less than, greater than, or equal to? It's less than, because it's across from the smaller angle. Our second, you could really use your eyes on, says compare BC to EF. What do we think? It's greater than. It's big. It's longer, right? Like super longer. It's across from 95, whereas EF is across from 20. And then last, comparing BC to EF. BC is across from the right angle, which is 90 degrees. And EF is across from 90. So that means these 2 are equal. These 2 are turned. I know they don't look like they're the same exact triangle, but if you notice, the side that they correspond with is not like mirrored to each other. That's why it looks a little weird. But that's it on filling in the blank. We are going to do solvent inequality. This is the only math in this section, like numbers-wise. So we are going to take the 2 expressions. Sometimes they're sides, sometimes they're angles. But you're always going to compare the 2 expressions. You're going to say less than, greater than, or equal to. So in this case, 3x minus 18 is across from this angle. How can we figure out the measure of that angle? Add and subtract. So 70 and 70 make, subtract from 180, and that angle is 40. Whereas this angle is across from 48. So what inequality sign am I going to put in between them? Less than. I forgot to have you write this down. The only extra rule when you solve an inequality is when you divide by a negative. What do we do when we divide by a negative? You flip the sign. You flip the sign. So less than would become greater than and vice versa. So that's the only extra rule. Otherwise, you solve it exactly the same. We're going to distribute. We got 3x minus 18 is less than 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 22 is 44. I always recommend moving the smaller x, but in this case I especially recommend it so we don't have a negative x. So which one are we going to move? The 2x. We're going to subtract it. 3x minus 2x is x minus 18 is less than 44. My last step, add 18, yes. X is less than 62. It doesn't ask you to graph in this section, just for you to know. You do need to know how to graph on your exam, which we will review at a later time. So again, these are lengths in both of these examples, but you might see an angle, but it'll be the same idea. Questions on this one? Okay. The second, we have x plus 14. We're going to compare it to 2 times 3x minus 8. You could probably just look and compare them. What do we have thoughts? Less than, greater than, or equal to? It is less than. It's across from 37, whereas the other is across from 84. So definitely less than. We'll distribute like normal. So we'll have 6x minus 16. Which of these is the smaller x? Just the x, so subtract that. 14 is less than 5x minus 16. My next step, add 16. 30 is less than 5x. Divide by 5. So we have 6 is less than x, but we can flip it if you were to graph this. It's not. You wouldn't graph in the direction of the arrow. So if you flipped x and 6, what would my sign turn into? A greater than. But I would accept either one in this case. If it were a multiple choice question, it would have x first, but just for you to know. Questions on this one? Okay. Last is a word problem. We do practice these here in a minute. 2 sailboats start at the same location. Go ahead and put a dot at your starting point. So we have 2 sailboats. They're both going to be described here. The first one is going to travel 5 miles west. I forgot to talk to you about this. So in a compass, which direction is up? North. Which direction is down? And then left is west, and then east. Never eat soggy waffles. I just remember north, south, east, west, but however you want to remember it. So when we go 5 miles west, which direction is that? To the left. You're going to make sure you label 5 miles. It's a length. It doesn't give us a degree. It just says then you turn north. And you turn north for 8 miles. So north is up for 8 miles. This is sailboat A. So all of that was for sailboat A. Sailboat B went 8 miles south. So that would be down. So this is sailboat. Whoop. And then went east for 5 miles, so to the right for 5 miles. So I'm going to tell you right now, a lot of times they would give you this angle, which would help us decide more information. So I'll explain if they gave us an angle. But right now, it says which boat is farther from the starting point. Which one? They both did the same thing, right? Just opposite. So which one is further? Neither. So in this case, it's neither. I'll explain when it wouldn't be neither, because we're going to practice that here in a second. So if they gave us an angle measure and like this was 10 degrees and this one was 30 degrees, which one would be further away from where they started? And yeah, sailboat B would be further because it made a wider angle. Okay, so a lot of times it'll give you an angle like this one is 40 degrees and this one is 20 degrees. So in this case, sailboat A would be further because it made a wider angle. So you can take out your whiteboard marker. We're going to practice because we do have a quiz on Monday, and I want to make sure we are getting into practice. Yes, ma'am.
For on ours, that has the angles on there, would that be?
It does.
It has 29 and 50.
Oh, why is it not on mine? Okay, let me redraw it then. So apparently you have an angle. It's just not written on mine. So what is the...
A is 29.
A turned 29 degrees, and then B turned 50 degrees. 51 degrees. All right, so which one is further from the starting point then? B, because it made a larger turn, or a wider turn. So sailboat B. Sorry about that. I'll have to fix that. See, I've taught this lesson twice in the past 2 days, and yet nobody's told me that. Perfect. Go ahead and take out your whiteboard marker. Some of these are a lot to read, so it is extremely helpful if you just write the answer one at a time instead of both of them at the same time. Oh, I see. It's like in a different font. All right, sorry, here's the first two. Go ahead and do the first one first and then the second one, second. Make sure I check it. Give me a second here. Good, so first one is angle S, angle R, angle T. Then the second is angle J, angle K, angle L. All right, this next one, so remember, you're going to decide whether it's possible to form a triangle given the lengths. Explaining your reasoning is just showing me your math. I'm fine with that. Good. Good. So the first one, 4 plus 9, is not greater than 10, so it's a no. Oh, sorry. It's a yes. It is greater than 10. Sorry, the next two are no's. So then we have 8 plus 9, which is 17. It is not greater than 18, so that's a no. And then last, 5 plus 7 is 12. That is not greater than 12, so it is a no. Perfect. This next one, please do them one at a time. It's just a lot for me to read because there's a lot of letters. You're listing the sides from shortest to longest. Good. The first one's good. Good, just when you're listing segments, you put the line above it. It's when you compare lengths that you don't put the line above it. So we said AB, BC, AC, that's correct. And then go ahead and answer the second. good. That's good. X, Y, Y, Z, Z, X, yeah. X, Y, Y, Z, Z, X. Perfect. And then I think we do some, you just need to write less than, greater than, or equal to. You don't have to write the whole statement. You just write the symbol. You can answer both at the same time. Yes. Good. Good. It is greater than and then less than. All right, compare the angles. So again, less than, greater than, or equal to is all you have to write. That's good. Good. Should get greater than and then less than. All right, we have two more. So, you fly, or your flight flies 100 miles west, so 100 miles, turns 20 degrees, and flies for 50 more. So you're comparing how far you got versus how far they did, and they flew 100 miles north and then turned 30 degrees and started flying 50 miles east. Obviously, my picture is not to scale. Whoops. So, which one is further? Your friend's flight, and the reason is because they turned to 30 degrees. This next one you don't have to write down. We could just talk about it if you want. It's the same idea, just the numbers change. They both go 210. One goes south, one goes east. And then they both go 80 miles. One goes west, one goes 80 miles north. The only difference is their angle. One turns 70 degrees and one turns 50 degrees. So which one is further from the airport? Your flight will be further because the angle was bigger.